Hey everyone, welcome to Yoga Detour. I'm Cecily, I'll be your instructor today. Today is hip day, getting into the part of the body that seems to take the biggest hit when we do a lot of sitting around or a lot of exercises that keep us in linear motion like running, walking, cycling. We're gonna break free of those patterns today, so move your chairs to the side and join me on the mat. So just before we get started, try and have something that looks like a yoga block lying around nearby, within reach, and then we're going to move on to our backs. Starting with the knees bent. And as you lie down, if it feels like you could use some support under your head, then please grab a pillow or a blanket or roll the edge of your mat up so that your head's not tilting backwards. You want to have the chin and the forehead level with each other. And then from there, I'm just going to separate the feet a little bit wider. And just slowly allow my right knee to drop out and in, noticing where that range comfortably is. And as I'm moving my right leg, I'm thinking about keeping my left hip on the floor, so it's not going with that leg at all. It's just staying still, allowing my right leg here to have the spotlight for a moment. And I might just linger with that knee resting wide, noticing if I feel any kind of tension or resistance from the tissues around it. And do the same thing inside. And if you feel anything in your ankle or in your knee or in your hip, those are the kind of things that we should be making a note of. So not pushing into those sensations, but just being aware of how to move in a way that doesn't exacerbate anything that feels like it could be harmful. Let's do the same thing on our left now, moving that leg out and in. See if you can zero in on any muscles that tend to want to activate here with that movement to maybe create a deeper range, as well as the muscles that feel like they're getting a good release, even a bit of a stretch. Right hip is staying on the floor, nice and steady. And then the next time that left one goes out, let's just let it hold there for a moment. See if it's possible to let go of it a little bit, or if it feels like you want to activate the area around your hip, how does that feel instead? And the same thing going internally. And then back up. I'll keep the feet wide, and this time I am going to allow both knees to drop over to the right, and then walk my feet a little bit over to the left. So I end up feeling this length moving down through the thighs, specifically here on my left side, so that as I reach down through that left knee, I'm activating the left bum and smoothing out the front of that left hip. You might feel like you want to combine that with a little bit of an overhead reach, pressing that left wrist back, hanging on to it with your right hand. Again, if there's any sensation here in that left knee or in that left ankle, just back off a little bit until the movement's more comfortable. And then we'll shift back to center, reset the feet, and do the same thing on the other side. So I move the knees over to the left, walk the feet a little bit to the right. I'm going to keep the feet flexed, drive down and out through that right thigh, grab that right wrist and pull it back. Feeling the activation there in the right bum, driving that right hip forward. This whole time I'm keeping my upper back relaxed, my shoulders on the floor, no tension in and around the neck and jaw. And then we'll bring it back to center again. I'm just going to keep my arms in a bit of a cactus position here, bent up around the height of my shoulders. And now again, the left leg will stay where it is. My right's going to pull in toward my chest. I'm going to use my hamstrings here, the muscles in the back of the thigh, to squeeze the heel into the sit bone. And now I'm going to explore more of a circle. It's not very big. It's just enough to sort of teach my body how to stabilize itself through the trunk while allowing for mobility through that hip. So we'll do 3 circles in that direction and then switch and do 3 more in the other direction. By all means, if it feels like you want to go slower or faster, feel free to go at your own pace. You can press pause at any time. And I'm going to take that leg up into the air, give it a little shake so you can loosen up your foot and your ankle there a little bit. And then bring it back down, and we'll do the same thing. The left knee pulls in, heel squeezes to the sit bone, foot can be flexed or pointed, just activated in some way, and then I begin to move that knee into the circle. Noticing how the left operates as compared to the right. Sometimes you might feel like one side is a bit clunky, a little less fluid, or sometimes they're about the same. Moving in these circular patterns to again break us free of those chairs and more linear movements that we do every day. After you've done 3 and through on that left leg, let's bring that foot back down. Sorry, give it a shake first, almost forgot. Shake it out. And then as that leg comes down, we're going to shift over onto the side of the body. If it's comfortable here for you to have your head support on your arm, that's great. If you'd rather use a block or a pillow again underneath, feel free to extend the arm forward and place that support underneath your head. Just like we did on the back, I'm going to draw that left knee up in toward the chest. And as I do that, it should feel like your hips are staying stacked. So I'm not really dropping that top hip forward or letting it roll behind me. And then I create that same circle. Now we're moving in a different relationship to gravity. I'm keeping my foot engaged, again, flexed here. You could point it as well. And then changing directions. So the challenge here is now to not let my hip move forward or back, but to isolate that movement again, just through the leg. Good. And then I'm going to switch over to my other side. I'll give you the view from behind just so you can see how my back here isn't moving around. It's still isolated just in the leg. Really paying attention to this point here and not letting it drop back or forward. Just keeping it nice and still. So there's definitely going to be some work happening here in the bum. Changing directions. Great. And then we'll return to the back for a second. Just give the legs a little shake, the hips a little wiggle. And then if you have a yoga block lying around, we're going to be using that next as we come up towards seated. And I'm going to fix my hair. I don't know about you. So holding on to that block, bringing it onto the mat, and using it as our seat. So I come back up into a squat-like position, and I'm using this as sort of like my ideal grounded position, getting me towards the floor. How often do you come into a squat? If it's not very often, this is something that I would recommend doing more of. So once we get into our seat, we want to try and keep the heels grounded and sit in a way where we feel like we're tall and comfortable rather than kind of falling backwards. So adjust the height of the block to wherever it needs to be to support you. I'm going to keep my arms relaxed here, leaning a bit over to my left, and then letting my right knee actively open from the use of my hip. Notice here how I'm keeping the ankle strong, tipping onto the outer edge of my foot, my toes lift. And then I'm going to counter that by going internally, so working to keep my hips still heavy toward the block and driving that thigh inward. If you feel this goes right into your knee, then you might walk your foot a little further forward and minimize that range. The important thing is just to make sure that the thigh bone is moving into that different relationship with the hip socket. So we visited both the external range and the internal range. Okay, and then we'll do the other side. I'm just going to turn around so you can see my left leg. And as I start to set myself up again, just keeping those heels grounded in place, opening up through the left knee, working through that ankle, keeping the foot grounded on the outer arch as it tips over. And then I'll go internally, keeping that hip connected to the block. Not pushing into any kind of pain or discomfort. And see if you can notice the difference between pain and just foreign feelings. If you've never taken your leg into internal rotation before, it might just feel weird. Okay, And then I'm going to take my block off to the side and find my way onto the hands and feet in sort of this crab-like position. Keeping the feet a little bit wide, and then dropping my right knee internally, just like we did on the block, and externally. Internally and externally. If the wrists feel like they can't support you here, feel free to drop the hips and move from there. Okay, then we'll do the left, internally and externally. The whole thing is remaining active. My foot is on, my ankle is engaged, and my knee is staying at the same angle the whole time. All right, and I'm going to shift onto that left hip, drawing my right leg back behind me into a 90-90 position. So my front leg is at 90 degrees, where my knee is lined up with the hip, and my back knee is lined up at 90 degrees as well. I'm going to keep both feet flexed, place my hands lightly on the floor, and then try to engage here through that left leg, really pushing it through the floor. And as I get that action really driving away from me with the leg, my hands are light. I start to need them less to hold me up here. You might feel a little bit like you're falling to your left. That's totally normal if this is your first time in this position. But over time, it will become easier to center your torso and feel a little less gripping in that back hip. For now, just do your best to try and keep pressing that front leg through the floor, really activating the area there around your hip. Let's hold for just a couple more breaths. And then slowly shifting over to that left side, I'm going to pick up my right leg, bring it forward, and switch the left leg around the back. And same as before, the knees in line with the hip, the left knee is in line with that hip, the feet are flexed, the knees are at 90 degrees, and I start to press. Right leg moving through the floor, keeping the chest lifted here, so I'm not doing a big forward bend. I'm just activating the area around that right hip. Taking a couple more breaths. And then slowly making your way into a comfortable seated position, whether that's cross-legged or bringing that block back underneath your hips, and then just seeing how it feels to sit for a moment and be still. Sort of interesting to think that the whole point behind yoga practice is to be able to do just this, sit comfortably and not feel like we have to fidget around a lot to be comfortable. So just keeping that in mind. If you enjoyed that last exercise in 90-90, we'll be doing more of that, so look for the video entitled 90-90 exercises. I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for following the detour.